Good morning and welcome to you. Rapid response webinar, also featuring today UC Personal Insight question 3 on talent or skill. How do we tackle this baby? And I'll be pulling Laura Schadler in just a little bit once we get through the news. So really enjoying these conversations about essay writing. We always get new and fresh insight into them too. So this is really great for our practice as professionals to have an opportunity to reflect on the essays as opposed to just always working on them, and also to survey the work and to survey the student work and to celebrate the diversity of work. Every essay is really, truly unique. And, it's going to be the 10th anniversary of Blue Stars this Wednesday, June 10th. And I named my business Blue Stars when I was trying to think through names. I was thinking through variations on my name, Morgenstern, Morning Star, and nothing worked. And a friend of mine said, well, when it comes to the galaxy, blue stars are the biggest and the brightest, and there are millions of them. And I felt like that's a really great image for the kind of work that I've been doing with students, over the years as a professor. And what I want to do with students is really show them how to be their best selves and to show them that they can be among other best selves. We don't have to elbow ourselves or each other out of this space. So to be a blue star is to be a really brilliant, shining, expansive creature. And I think people realize too that a lot of the work that I do is very focused on growth mindset. Also design thinking, our Silicon Valley buzzwords, but I've learned a lot from being here in the Silicon Valley. I've been here about 12 years, 13 years. So such great diversity to be reflecting on. I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to give these webinars and to exchange these ideas. So it's admittedly been a very emotional week for America. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. I think a lot of people are processing what's happening in the streets. I think people are going through various sorts of awakenings, and for a philosopher, that's always a really, really, really exciting thing. As painful, sometimes as uncomfortable as that might be for us, it's a beautiful thing, and they call it growing pains. And let us hope that America is going through growing pains. And there's a quote I want to share with you from, this is a quote from a feminist author, Rebecca Solnit, quoting somebody else, and I don't know that source. I'm very, very sorry. It was in an interview just after the 2016 election, I believe, and she said, "Everything is falling apart and coming together at the same time." So very dynamic, very, very fertile times. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I've been doing anti-racist work ever since I was in college. I mean, that's one of the things that I love so much about college. One of the things why I embrace the work that I do so much, because college opened my eyes. It was a true awakening to anti-racism. I was very involved with the anti-apartheid movement back in the late 80s. And so when I do the kind of work that I do, I have introduced our students to anti-racist work. And I have one student in mind right now, someone I started working with about 6 or 7 years ago, and I introduced her to a book called The People's History of the United States. And she just went with it. This was a Chinese American student in New Jersey, very, very high achieving student, and did a lot of social justice work in 9th and 10th grade, and it just sort of blossomed into more advanced work in 11th grade. She was admitted to Princeton and Yale. She chose Yale. The admissions officer wrote to her and said, your passion for social justice just warms my heart. So, you know, I know that going through these dynamic times doesn't always feel so great, but when we embrace the moment as leaders, as future leaders, we will get recognized. You will get recognized. So I really want to encourage this work. I have a link to a very, very beautiful piece by James Baldwin in the resources today to share with you. I also want to share that I noticed on my Twitter feed, Sunnyvale, there was some Sunnyvale Black Lives Matter. There was a Black Lives Matter protest, I believe, yesterday, and that was awesome. You can check that out. There's a lot of documentation on Twitter. And there's a demonstration in Palo Alto today at noon at City Hall. So I thought I'd announce that in case you guys feel super energized from this webinar. You just want to take that energy over. So I'm planning a special event for everyone for the 10th year anniversary, and just stay tuned. I don't want to reveal too much yet, but it's going to be exciting and cool. I did want to announce that we are still accepting students. So, and we do offer a 5% discount through June 30th. So, all right, let's do this. Let's put that week behind us because we do have to move forward, and we want to have that firm foundation, and we want to really feel energized for that. So just whatever didn't work for you this week, forget about it. As we say, we New Yorkers say, forget about it. Just put it aside. The stuff that worked really well for you, just put that in your back pocket. Let's keep that with you as we move forward. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, one moment. I need to get into presentation mode here first. Share some news with you, and then we'll move over. Okay, this is me. I've already talked about me and our 10th year anniversary, so I'm going to move on. The team and I are getting together on Wednesday for a virtual anniversary celebration. I'm looking forward to that. Here is our schedule for today, and let's just go forward together. Here are our topics. Okay, news on Stanford. And I've linked you to the article on this. Stanford has announced its reopening plans, but you know, they're only so definite, but they're working on them. And this is sort of the basic blueprint at this point. Most classes are going to be online. They're very mindful of trying to prevent a second wave. They're going to start the fall quarter early because, as you can see in my last bullet point, they're also going to end early. Most colleges, maybe all, will be doing this. So ending the semester early, doing exams online so that students don't need to go back to campus. So, but as you can see in the fourth bullet point, planning is not yet complete. And that's just where we are. Rapid innovation, rapid response, rapid engineering. But they are planning that there will be a limited amount of students on campus, and they're putting, you know, until the processes are put in place for testing and contact tracing and isolation. But for now, no students will be on campus. They're working on it. They're working on this rotation system. So this is what they say for incoming first-year undergraduates. We know this is not how you originally envisioned beginning your college career, but we will work to make the coming year as rich and rewarding an experience as possible within the constraints of this unusual time we are living through. I just want to give you a sense of their voice too, and their concern, and you know, the ways in which I feel like admissions administrators and admissions people are feeling maybe this renewed sense of community, of having to really make things work together. I've got another, I think it's a New York Times article on, what are colleges going to look like? It's a panel discussion. And there's a representative from the Service Workers Union there who's talking about the concerns of service workers as well. So, there's a whole ecosystem to be thinking about in planning for a living with COVID semester. Juniors. Okay, Dartmouth and University of Virginia have joined the test optional bandwagon, so we've got that. For juniors, what we're telling you, what we're suggesting is that you register for a test date in the late fall, because pretty much what we're hearing is that priority is going to be given to students who already registered for the test but couldn't take it due to COVID. Current seniors will probably have priority, so you should probably be planning to take the test like November or December. As I said last week, it's time to get serious with your summer. It's time to get serious working on your applications. And there's a lot to juggle with your ACT, SAT prep, and, COVID, the pandemic. It's just asking us to really summon our inner strength to be our best at time management. Maybe also, at the same time, not to be perfectionists, to give ourselves slack at certain times so you can sort of keep these balls up in the air at once. Giving yourself breaks. Breaks are good. Okay, I don't have any new news for current freshmen and sophomores, but just, reminding everyone, getting focused on those personal growth summers. I invite you to last month's webinar, session 5, if you need more ideas. I do want to give a shout out to one of our students who was selected for a remote internship in artificial intelligence and machine learning, and he'll be working 20 hours a week, and he might even be earning commission. He just reported that this week, and he'll be doing that in addition to taking an online class at Columbia on, I believe it's artificial intelligence, machine learning. He'll also be doing online volunteering. So I just want to give encouragement and keep giving you ideas. We also had another shout out to a student who had a book club approved by the website Passion Project. So if you're a high school student, you have a passion, you would like to share it with younger students, you can devise a curriculum. So that's another really cool thing to do. So try and stay active, have some fun, also relax, do some reading, expand your minds, and also do something that shows your activity. Stay COVID conscious. Make sure your volunteering is responsive. Okay. Wisdom. Yeah, Stu Schmill from the conversation about a week and a half ago, there was a lot of wisdom there, so I wanted to share a little bit more. This is about campus this year. It's going to look very different than it did last fall. There will be social distancing. There probably won't be large gatherings. So it's important to know what to expect, right? And not feel super disappointed in the moment. So this is what college is going to look like this year. Hopefully just this year. Oh yeah. So yeah, I just have a lot of wisdom. I have a backlog of wisdom that I can't incorporate into every webinar. This is from Karen Richardson, Princeton Dean of Admissions. There's no one thing we're expecting students to do. It's always like this. So I often get questions from parents. What should my child do? What are the things that my child should do? Again, the checklist mentality. And that's not it. That's not admissions. Not for Princeton. And likewise, back to Stu Schmill. Don't think of yourself as a college applicant first, but as a person and community member. So Yeah, and that's the attitude that we take. That's why personal growth um, is one of the great results of our work, is that, you know, we want students to be prepared for life, and it's the students who are, you know, prepared for life who gain that attention and recognition from the elite schools. All right. I have more. I didn't realize I had this fourth piece. Excellent. This is from this New York Times article, What Will Colleges Look Like in the Fall? And I have linked you to that. And I do realize I forgot to link you to resources in my last email. I was really busy this week. But I have all of them in the resources for this week. It's a very interesting article, this panel discussion I was telling you about. And let me read this first. We're also thinking a lot about the importance of shifting the culture. When we reopen, it's no longer a time of unlimited freedoms. It will be a time of mutual accountability and collective responsibility for the well-being of one another. This is Mary Dana Hinton. She's the incoming president of Hollins University. It's a small liberal arts college, actually, in Virginia. And I pulled this because if you were to ask me what top colleges are going to be looking for in the next season and the next season and the next season for the next several seasons, this is the profile. Not the student who's like, you know, live free or die, right? That student, that would be a tone deaf student in these times, in these cultural times. That would not be a student who displayed cultural intelligence, right? So Mary Dana Hinton is really in tune with the shifts of American culture. This sense of mutual accountability, the sense of collective responsibility. If you were to ask me, what are colleges going to be looking for? That. I think they're going to be looking for that in the future. So, mark my words, I thought this was just a little gem right here. And, you know, we get so many different signals in our culture. We get so many signals about, you know, be free and 0 to 60 and 2.5 nanoseconds, whatever, you know, things like that. So, you know, part of all of our work with teens is really bringing them back to baseline, bringing them back to baseline of developing practices and awarenesses so that they become productive members who can really participate in innovating our society. It's going to be, it is a time of great innovation. I think that's all the wisdom I have. And let me unmute you. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Amy.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm great. How are you?
Awesome, awesome. I'm going to share my screen again, however, and get us situated. Second. Are you excited to talk about personal insight question 3?
I am. It's an interesting one.
It's an interesting, I can't wait. What about you?
Yeah.
Okay, but before we do that, let's first look at general tips for personal insight questions. So just to review really quickly, be specific. That's super important. Topmost tip we can give you. Stay focused on one aspect or one story. Include a takeaway or a lesson learned, the why. Don't get fancy. Don't feel like you have to write in a voice that isn't yours. Expect to draft multiple revisions so you can work through those initial bad ideas. I love that one. Avoid repeating topics or stories. Oh, here's the other thing too. We decided we added 2 because now that we were on our 3rd personal insight question, we realized that we can't really treat the essay topics individually because you're answering 4 and you're going to want to spread your content out throughout the 4 topics. So now that we have sort of a critical mass of essay topics, we do want to remind you to avoid repeating stories or topics in your essays, right? Spread your content throughout. And then also revise for tone, which I think that last piece of wisdom that I shared is, is demonstrative of the kind of tone that admissions readers are going to be very receptive to. So cool. Yes. And again, cannot stress enough this idea of just getting through those bad ideas.
Definitely. So many students tell me, I'm a bad writer. I hear that so often. And I want to be really clear that no student is a bad writer. What many students are bad at is just getting their butts in a chair and writing a crappy draft. So that's the piece to focus on, right? You have to be brave. You have to move through that feeling of, I'm a bad writer. This draft is terrible. And just know going in that you have to revise again and again. I love to tell my students, like, I'm working on a book right now. I've been revising it, I don't even want to say how long, 6 years, right? It really,
We move
you don't have to
faster
do
than
it.
that with students.
Yeah, definitely faster than that, right? But that's how you become a good writer, is that willingness to revise, that willingness to push through that bad writing. So at any rate, that's my PSA for today. And now we can get to the prompt. I had to share that.
Well, I once went to a writing workshop and there was a message on the whiteboard and the teacher said, I have one piece of advice to you, butt in chair. Butt was not the word, but butt in chair. And also for artists too, show up. It's just, you got to show up. All right, let's show up and let's let UC Personal Insight question 3 show up for us. And I'm going to move us. I don't know if this really works in the end in the presentation, but so people can see. Okay, what would you say is your greatest talent or skill? So we know that's the topic, talent or skill. I've color-coded the important elements. How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? Okay. Well, at first glance, I think our first observation is it looks a little like the question 2 on creativity. That's the thing about this question.
It does. It does.
Yeah. So, what's the difference between this question? The question on the talent or skill versus the question on creativity. Well, just to give you a quick example, maybe you made a crucial decision that changed the direction of your organization. And that was very, very significant. Okay. Well, in this instance, decision-making really isn't your talent or skill. It's something that you did in the moment and all these other forces aligned for you so that this other cool result could happen. And that topic would be better for leadership or maybe even creativity. Okay. So, but if you've been, avid at competitive math for 3 years, or if you've been tending to your backyard garden all throughout high school, these kinds of examples would work really well for question 3.
Exactly, because they're the type of thing that you're getting better at over time, right? It's not situational. It's not something that just spontaneously happened. And I think the other piece that we want to think about with this over time is, what does over time mean for a teen, right? So the UCs are really interested in what you've done in your high school years. And so if you started playing soccer when you were really young, yes, you can get that in to showcase that it was this lifetime love. But you really want to focus the essay more on the part of your development that happened in high school. So a good rule is, have you been doing this thing for about 2 years at least? And have those 2 years been in high school?
Right. So the key piece to this essay prompt is what's in green, over time. That's the piece, over time. So a decision that resulted in, you might have done other things over time that helped you make a great decision, right? But doing, competitive math, gardening, And we're going to give you lots of different examples, right? And then thinking about what does overtime mean for a teen, right? Overtime means something totally different for me than it would for someone who's not yet even 2 decades old, right? So rule of thumb is sort of like 2 years plus. But we also want to let you know, don't pick an activity or a skill or a talent for this question just because you've done it for a long time. So the fact that you've done something the longest shouldn't be a part of the decision that you make to write on that topic. It should be something that is significant and that plays also into your profile as well.
Definitely. I think it's also important to remember that you can be midway through this journey of developing this talent or skill. So it can definitely be a work in progress. You don't have to have mastered this thing, but you will want to write about where you plan to go with it next. Show your reader where you are in the process and anticipate that future you that we talked about last week. So definitely don't feel like it has to be a talent or skill that you're the best at.
Now, I know that the prompt does say greatest, so I don't want our message to feel like we're contradicting the prompt. But again, you can be very creative. So let's say I just met up with a student recently who took a class in negotiating and then, started putting it into practice. So maybe she's been doing it for 2 years, maybe a little less, but she can see that as something that will become her greatest talent or skill. So it could be something that you're still trying out, but definitely you've done for more than a year. And something that you see, like you really see a bright future in. You can totally use it that way. Let's talk a little bit more concretely then about just different examples of talents or skills, right? Because a talent or a skill, it could be creative or not creative. And again, that's how it differs from the question too. It could be piano, it could be drawing, like I said, it could be math, carpentry, database management. It could be something maybe that seems a little bit more esoteric, like listening, right? Community building. And then it could also be a sport, like basketball, how you got good at basketball. It can be any one of these kinds of things. Origami is another one. And I know that a lot of people have gotten a lot of life lessons out of doing origami. It doesn't have to be a big or flashy thing. That's another really important point.
Yes, definitely. And just to kind of go back to the basketball for a minute, this is such a great question for students who want to write about a sport. So if you've devoted your high school years to track, to water polo, this question is the one for you. And the thing that I really like about it is that you don't necessarily need to have been the captain of your soccer team. That's your leadership question if you were. But you just need to have developed your soccer skills over time. It needs to be something that really is meaningful to you.
If you're an aspiring biomedical researcher, you can write about the development of your lab skills over time. Something like that. And then also, like I mentioned, I call this something more esoteric called listening. If we put it into our contemporary professional language, that's a soft skill. So this is another great opportunity for you to showcase your soft skills. And this might be a place where you wouldn't be able to show that anywhere else, in your application. So perhaps you're good at connecting with others. Perhaps you're good at initiating projects. And as we know, and as I've written in blog posts, and I do repeat often, soft skills are becoming more and more and more important. And of course, the quote that I shared with you about the kind of behavior being expected now at colleges, that's all soft skill stuff.
Mm-hmm. And with all of this, I have to come back to the how. So let's not forget about the how, right? How did you develop your skill or talent, whatever you've chosen? Did you practice your juggling moves every day after school until you perfected them? Did you scour YouTube tutorials and learn how to build a dark room in your basement and start developing photographs? Are you taking an advanced ballet class and learning how to pirouette, right? The how.
This is a process essay. So that's, I think, a really important way to think about it. It's a process essay. But of course, we can't have processes just to have processes. They must be aimed towards something meaningful, which means that when we have the how, we've also got the why, right? So why does a skill matter to you? And why might it matter in the larger sense, And we've done fun things with the juggler, obvious analogies with juggling that that you can make just as an obvious example. So still always conveying the meaning. Why is this significant? Why would your admissions officer join you in finding this significant or being charmed by it?
Yes. Yeah. The how and the why always. I think the how and the why are also an opportunity to really make the essay your own. And the how and the why is where your unique journey comes through, no matter what, even if 100 people are writing about soccer. The how and the why is going to be your soccer story, your juggling story. Okay, so our next point is something that we talk about with our students a lot. Question 3 really provides an opportunity for being strategic about applying to different majors at different UC campuses.
Yeah, so for example, let's say you're thinking about going into the biotech industry. You've done a lot of bio, and you pretty much want to go for a bio major, but at some campuses, maybe you want to go for econ because you've also developed an interest in econ. You can see yourself combining these two things, and some campuses you're going to apply for bio, some campuses you're going to apply for econ. You've done most of your stuff in bio. You'll probably write question 6, which we've not gotten to, on a subject matter you find really interesting. So you probably write that topic on bio. And then you could write about the development of your talent or skill in econ in this essay, and you're really showing yourself to have this sort of interdisciplinary interest. So this is a nice way for you to strategize around applying to different campuses, because as we pointed out in the first webinar on UC essays, you have 4 essays that are just for all campuses that you apply to. So this is a place where you can diversify your own profile, like academically or in a pre-professional way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing I want to say, kind of just have to get it in, is that I think you can also think for how to answer this question, you can think about things that you love to do or things that you're good at that might not feel like they're big enough to put on a resume, let's say, but they still really matter to you. So you might be someone who loves to make amazing handmade collaged watercolor cards for people, or maybe you love to knit, or you've been practicing calligraphy for years, right? So if you've been committed to developing some skill over the years, even if it seems small to you at first, this is a really great place to share it in question 3.
And this just came up in my mind. We're working with a student who makes his business to talk with elderly people, and he's really interested in history. And I think it's a value in his family. It's really important for his parents, for him to have intergenerational relationships. And talking to older people, a teen writing an essay on developing that talent or skill, that could be a winning essay, So over the years, one of the things that happens with us when we work with our students is that they might come up initially with with cliche ideas, and we'll say, oh, that's so cliche, no, you can't do that. And then we'll suggest something to them, they're like, oh no, that's so cliche. And this is my response every time. Everything is cliche and nothing is cliche. It really depends on how you do it. Back to the how, right? As Laura was saying, that uniqueness comes with the how. So cool. Well, I feel like we've got like a ton of tips, and let's just like pull everything together here. And I'm going to move on. Well, let me just get to the next slide. Okay, we can do it like this. Okay, cool. Here are our general tips for question 3. So focus on the over time part of the prompt. Don't forget the how. Don't forget the why. Your talent or skill can fall into any category. It could be STEM, humanities, art. It could be personal. It can be little. It can be big. Okay. So delve into the mechanics of the development. Don't worry about being boring. This is a process essay. Okay. And honestly, in general, I should put that in the general tips, but whatever. In general, don't worry about being boring. You have to write the drafts. Okay. You can't judge anything until you've written it. So you have to write it first. All right. And now I believe it's time for some examples. So let's delve into some examples, and let's get the prompt up again. What would you say is your greatest talent or skill? How have you developed and demonstrated that talent over time? Emphasis, over time. All right, Laura. Oh,
Yes.
Oh, no. There's too many. That should have happened. Okay, Laura.
Okay.
What do you got?
So our first student really is an example of like everything we've talked about so far, I feel like. So just to reiterate, you can be straightforward, right? Don't be fancy. One thing that was really interesting that I noticed with a lot of the samples I looked back at was that almost every student just said at the beginning of their essay, my greatest talent is blank. My greatest skill is blank. So student A did that. Her, first or second sentence was, I believe my greatest skill is building communities. And then she got right into her specifics. She started a tech literacy class for seniors at her local library. She had really observed that the elderly in her community were feeling lonely, disconnected. They didn't know how to use their phones to call their families, all these different things she was observing. So she starts this program. It's a wonderful success. She summarizes, really briefly at the end that she uses this community building skill in other ways, but she really sticks to this one story for the bulk of the essay. And I think the thing that's really remarkable is that she's able to write about all these achievements and even state my greatest talent. And she doesn't sound braggy at all. And I think really one of the main reasons for that is that she just focuses on what she did, how she did it, and why it was a success in the end. So a really great example of kind of using all of the tips that Amy and I have been talking about.
I don't remember which UCs this student got into, but I can tell everyone that this student is at Stanford. I can tell you guys that. So again, she just started the UCSA as my greatest talent, and she was off and running. Okay, so I feel like in our culture, we've been giving teens messages that everyone has to be this hero. Of course, I think everyone is a hero, but we have this idea that we all have to be this conquering great, and then that's really is counterproductive when it comes to essay writing. So we were working, Laura and I together, working with a student, teaching him some yoga breathing. And, if you count, you get your butt in the chair, and then you count and inhale 5 breaths and then exhale 7 breaths. And you do that 3 or 4 times before you write. Just clear the air, all those voices, just out, get them out. And get the stuff in. So yeah, I'm just smiling. This is a great essay. Um, and let's move on to the second essay, and also a wonderful, wonderful essay whose greatest talent or skill was tinkering. Tinkering. And we've written variations of these kinds of essays with students. We've had students, who spend their time in the garage, doing sort of lots of electrical engineering type stuff. But he really took tinkering very seriously. He did break a few of our rules because he did start. He did start by talking about how, at age 5, he was navigating the internet by himself. And age 7, he was in chat rooms, animation. So he did plod us through his childhood. But what he showed us was that the tinkering really resulted in delving into advanced physics and history when his AP classes weren't enough for him, learning animation on his own, developing a mobile app, programming a robot. He taught a class, he composed music. This happens to be a sort of Renaissance sort of student who's a poet, I think, in many ways. This student was admitted to Berkeley EECS and also Brown engineering, and he did choose Brown. It was a hard decision, but so he did start sort of with his early life, but then it was almost like the essay snowballed at the end to show the cumulative effects. But the other piece that I want to bring out, I wrote some notes here, one second, I have this note here, is that as the essay moved, and the only way we could do this was if he was doing drafts, was that his tinkering was a way to show that he was a very curious person. And it was really his curiosity that was, his greatest talent or skill. And that the curiosity and then meant that he was an independent learner. So he gave us a lot of how by taking us through his childhood, actually. And he gave us the why in terms of letting us know that, tinkering for itself is an amazing thing. But if we pull that lens back a little bit and think about the larger significance, it also means, I've been training myself to be an independent thinker. Okay. What admissions reader doesn't want? A curious independent thinker, right? Boom. Love that essay.
Oh, so good. Yeah. I think his, part of this is just piggybacking on what you were already saying, Amy, but I feel like that sense of curiosity comes through so strongly. You really feel his excitement and his enthusiasm for learning, and it feels so authentic. And I think that just also goes back to what seems to be the theme of our conversation, which is don't get in your own way when you sit down to write. This essay really took on a life of its own, and he followed it through many, many rounds of revision to find this tone and this energy that it ended up having. And it was so clearly him at the end. I think that's another thing about revision. Students are sometimes worried their voice is going to go away or it's not going to be true to them. And I think this is such a great example of revision really helping a student show exactly who they are. It was very fun to work with him on it.
All right, moving on to our last example, the sports example, because we know a lot of our students play sports and we don't always know what to do with that come admissions time sometimes. Question 3.
Yeah, so this essay is a great example of using the space to write about sports. Also a great example of the overtime that we spent a lot of time talking about. So this student started to play tennis when she was 5. However, I will say with this one, she did not take a lot of time with her younger years. So the bulk of the essay was really about her dedication to tennis in high school. She just wanted to make it clear that it was something she'd done her whole life. And it was really a process essay, as Amy mentioned earlier, this idea of showing the process. She really takes us through, and we see the process of her becoming a great player. And she did list awards she won and other stuff, but it was really kind of secondary to the journey. And then she got into sort of the off the court, ways that tennis helped her contribute to her community. She grew as a leader, but a teacher as well. So a leader amongst her peers, but also taught younger students, and really just developed her own personal strength, resilience. I actually wrote down close to her concluding line. Again, super straightforward. She just wrote, tennis is the most tangible way that I've measured my growth over the years. And we saw that in the essay, so it felt really true, and just a great example.
And she did grow over the years, because we knew her over several years.
Yeah.
And that's the piece, we never saw her on the court or anything, but there was really significant maturing, growth into a young woman that you could see, So this was a great essay to track that. And I don't know, I guess these webinars are just such a great opportunity to smile,
Yeah.
we usually go from season to season. We just move on to, our next cohort. We're heavily involved with, the students we work with each year. So we sort of forget. So it's really pleasurable to look back and at all these prior negotiations. So we're ready. Oh, no, one more slide. Let's put this all together. Yeah. So here we've got tips for personal insight, question 3. And then we have what our examples did, just to bring us all back together again. So student A shows how she developed her community building skills. Student B shows how tinkering led to insight and creativity, independent learning. And student C shows how she excelled at tennis over time. So I'm going to let you gather your questions while I know, Laura, you need to leave in about 8 minutes. So if you have to pop out and I'm and there's still questions, I can still answer them.
Okay.
Do you want to show you that I have I want to move this. I have some resources, some from last week, on testing, Stanford online classes, how the pandemic revolutionized college admissions. That's Wall Street Journal and Blue Star's parents shared that with me. Very insightful. Getting off the wait list. What will college be like in the fall? The New York Times article I was telling you about. I wanted to link you to the Teen Life, teenlife.org list of online summer programs. People still looking for ideas. And then, I always grow as a human when I read James Baldwin. This is a beautiful piece. James Baldwin is a major influence on my own public feminist work, my own literary work. So I wanted to share. If you have a quiet moment, he's not an easy read. He's a literary writer, but if you want insight into the entrenched racism of American culture in a way that you will grow as a person, James Baldwin. All right, I'm going to stop sharing screen and check out. And there are questions. Okay. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts or anything else, Laura, while I'm just looking through the questions here. It's reading through them.
I want to sort of say something similar to what I said last week, but I think it's also very true for this question, is that to me, this one just presents a really unique opportunity for similar reasons as the creativity prompt, in that it really lets you get into some of the qualitative aspects of who you are and what you've done, how you think, what's important to you. So I think, and I'm sure conversations in future weeks will get into this, some of the questions are a little bit more asking for something a little more specific. And so I think this is just a really interesting space for students, and also one that not as many people take advantage of, similar to creativity.
Hmm. Okay, so we do have the question, does the talent really have to be the greatest or can it be a minor one? And we did touch upon this, but again, it could be baking, it could be making handmade cards. It really is an open-ended question. So, and like I said, like, don't try to think about yourself as a superhero, but everyone, and it doesn't even have to be heroic either. It doesn't have to be the greatest. It's your greatest, um, and you can spin it in a variety of different ways. Okay, next question is, what about just knowledge of a domain? Would knowledge of a domain be considered, talent? So somebody's son is interested in airplanes and and his son has just soaked in all sorts of knowledge about, different kinds of airplanes, how you manufacture them, safety, data. What are you thinking?
I think it could be. Um, I think we'd have, you'd want to position it just to make sure that you are answering the prompt. But I think, um, maybe you could play with the wording of it, I think, to make sure you're fitting the prompt. But I think, again, it shows a very specific interest. Um, so we'd have to think about what is the talent or the skill being displayed
You
from
want to
that
make
knowledge.
if I'm thinking through all the questions now, but if there's a question where it's asking about your curiosity, that might be a better place for it. But let's say you're really interested in business and you want to study business, or other UC schools that don't have business, you want to study econ, that's your main thing. But the business you're interested in is like, aerodynamic, aeronautic engineering, and you want to be that run that kind of tech business. Well, you can claim in question 3 that you're a mini expert on aeronautics. Yes. So yes, you can. As a junior, is it too late to develop a new skill? Of course not. It is not too late to develop a new skill. Whether that would be called your greatest talent or skill would be another story. And, we just have to look at, again, not everyone has to answer this question either. So it's possible that the array of things in a teen's profile might fit better somewhere else. If they started something new, that really like led to an awakening, that probably wouldn't be the space. This question probably wouldn't be the space, because again, we have the over time piece. I guess if you did something really heroic, like, I don't know, like learned something, but immersion is not over time. So no, I'm going to say probably whatever that new skill is going to go somewhere else. That's what I'm going to think. Do you have thoughts on that, Laura?
I would agree with that. I mean, I'm always of the mind that, if it's close, we can brainstorm about how to phrase things, but we also want to make sure we're following the prompt. That's something Amy and I talk about a lot, with students, is go back to the prompt, make sure you're actually answering it.
The prompt is all.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And again, you have 8. So, and they're all quite open-ended, and just depending on your strategy. Again, if you're going for engineering at Berkeley, there's a particular strategy, or engineering at other schools. So, this is just one question. Okay, so I'm getting a question like, I'm just trying to figure out what the question is. Like, would it be improving reading comprehension in AP literature class? Would that be considered a talent or skill?
I had a student, an essay popped into my mind, a student who wrote about English being his second language, and he actually said learn like English was his greatest talent or skill. And I think that does speak to what you were saying to the first question. It doesn't have to be greatest in relation to other people. So it
Yeah.
can be your own, the thing you've done that is your greatest skill in your
Mhm.
life, you know, like that. It really gotta get it out of your head that it's like a competition, like I'm not the best, you know, bike rider in the world kind of thing.
No, this essay is a good opportunity for English language learners as well. I agree. I agree. But also, I think for a lot of students, AP language or AP Lit is very hard. It's mind bending. Again, because outside of that AP class, the other cultural cues are not to be a deep reader, not to be a deep thinker, not to read historical texts. So learning that over a year as a skill, that could be a monumental piece for a student. It depends on the student. So yeah. Okay, Laura, I know you got to take off,
I just want to
and
say bye to everyone.
thank you. Thank you for
Thank
joining
you so
us
much.
today. And I think we're actually good. That's all the questions we have for today. So
Oh, perfect.
note that next week the time is different. It's at 12:30 instead of 10. Just our partnering has shifting things around a bit. So do take a look at the new schedule, and I also hopefully will soon have more news about a special event I have for our 10th year anniversary. So I hope this was helpful for you all. I hope you're feeling energized and inspired. And if you're in the Palo Alto area, maybe you'll pop out for a little solidarity. Anyway, have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Take care.